Episode 22 begins at the Castler's sword chamber. The Sword of Omens that was there just told Lionel, the leader of the Thundercats that was sleeping in his room, that there was something wrong. So, after Lionel woke up in his room, he went to the sword chamber to find out what's going on. So he did. So long story short, after Lionel had arrived at the sword chamber, he picks up his sword and did what any good guy would do, look through the sword side to tell him what happened. So when he did, what he saw was unbelievable. There's an astral world. But that's not all. It's an astral prison there. And inside the prison was his spiritual mentor, Jaga. And he's been held prisoner. But he's not alone because the Nemix was also there. And he just pleaded his case to tell Jaga that he'll be remaining in the astral prison for all eternity. Now, later on, the Nemix will explain to Jaga why he's imprisoned and what he needed him for. So, anyway, back at the Lair Sword Chamber and with Lionel, now that he had found out what had happened to his mentor Jaga and he's been held prisoner in the astral prison, he leaves the Sword Chamber to tell the rest of the news to the Thundercats. So, meanwhile, at the Black Pyramid, in the tomb chamber, we see Mumm-ra, who just woke up from his sleep in the sarcophagus. He says that there was something weird going on at Cat's lair. So he has to go investigate in his cauldron, so that's what he did. And what he saw was unbelievable. Lionel telling the news to the Thundercats at the Cat's lair's meeting room. It was there that Lionel just told his friends the bad news. His spiritual mentor, Jaga, is in some kind of danger. He's in the astral prison, so now it's up to him to save him, somehow. But there's only one problem, according to Tiger, when he goes next to speak in his case: how to reach him and how to help him. So even though Panther agrees with Tiger, but says that there's a bigger problem: how to communicate with Jaga. Anyway, Chitara goes next to speak in her case to say there must be someone who could help them, someone that knows the astral world. The Thunderkins who agree with Chitara's suggestion, and now it's their turn to plead their case. So they thought, why not the Netherwitch? According to the kittens, they suggest that maybe the Netherwitch can help them out. But unfortunately, what the Thundercats didn't even realize is that Mumm-ra was listening in, but they were unaware of it. So speaking of Mumm-ra, back with him, he pleaded himself a case. So Lionel wants to visit the Netherwitch, huh? Well, you're probably wondering what was Mumm-ra's plan. But before that can get underway, that's when Mumm-ra pleaded himself a case that Lionel had no idea that the Netherwitch and Mumm-ra are the same person. At least not yet anyway. So one of the first things he did was to transform himself into his monstrous form just like he normally does, as any bad guy would do. Well, let's get back to the plan that I talked about. What Mumm-ra did next is that he disguised himself as another witch. So meanwhile, back at Cat's lair, after the Thundercats had left the lair's meeting room, they're now in the Thunder Tank. So the Thunder Tank is now on its way to the Nether Witch's lair. But the Thundercats have a reason to worry about Lionel. So on the way there, what Chitara wanted to know from him if he's sure he has to go through with it. You know, you could put yourself in a lot of trouble and a lot of danger, Panthros said. Well, Lionel pleaded his case to say even if it were so, Jaga needs Lionel. He's in serious trouble. Then Lionel also pleaded a case to say that the Netherwitch is the only person that can take him to the astral world. And if that's the case, because he said it's the only way to get there and nothing else. So Lionel said, in other words, he doesn't have a choice but to go through with it. So long story short, back with the Thunder Tank, it had just arrived at the Bridge of Slime. According to Snarf, and he's not kidding, he says right across that bridge is the pit of the Nether Witch. That's where she lives. Before Lionel can head off, that's when Tiger suggested to go with him, but Lionel refused. There must be a way that we can do something for you, Chitara suggested. Well, you can wish me luck, Lionel suggested. And so after that, Lionel heads off. So long story short, after the Thunder Tank had left, it's now up to Lionel to cross the bridge of slime. And he did it with a little help from his claw shield, of course. Well, back with Lionel, the good news is that he made it to the middle of the bridge. Now here comes the bad news. A two-headed creature known as the God Rodrock comes up to attack him. So back with Lionel, he was about to answer the distress call from his sword, but then he accidentally slipped off the bridge. But despite a minor setback, thanks to his claw shield, he manages to grab onto it. And of course, thanks to his sword, well, with both that in mind, that's when Lionel did something he never did before. He jumped on top of the bridge. Well, good news, he made it. So, anyway, back with the God Rod Rock, it went right back into the water. And good news for Lionel, he crossed the bridge of slime to the pit of the Netherwitch. Meanwhile, at Castle Plondar, here you see Voltaren, and Jackalman are setting up a Thundrillium cannon. Then Sly, the leader of the mutants, just pleaded his case to say once with Lionel out of the way, there's no better way we could have a chance to raid Castlair, he said. Now Jackalman happens to agree with Sly, then pleads his case to say if Lionel is out of the way, of course. But then Sly has his turn to ask a question. Why would Mumm-ra lie about it? It's not in his interest to do so, he said. Then Jackalman, by accident, when he lets go of the wheel, it accidentally ran over a monkey in his foot. Then it's Voltman's turn to plead his case to tell Jackalman to relax. Then Voltman said that there is no way that the Thundercats could stand a chance against the Thundranian cannon. Now back with Lionel, he just made it inside of the pit of the Netherwitch. Well, now that he's made it inside, although he did slide down a little bit, but otherwise he's okay. So, as Lionel explores further inside of the pit of the Netherwitch, he at first found it weird that it was empty, or at least that's what he thought. But then, long story short, Lionel decided to think nothing of it and continued to explore. Then, long story short, thanks to that three-eyed dinosaur, it backed Lionel to the cavern, where he accidentally fell down. But luckily for Lionel, he survived intact. And then when Lionel woke up, he's face to face with the sorceress herself, the Netherwitch. So the Netherwitch said, so you must be Lionel. I've heard about your case. So let me get this straight. You wanted to enter the astral world. Is this correct? Now Lionel was in shock. He not only told her that that's indeed correct, but wanted to know how did she know about it. Well, why not? The Netherwitch said. I am the Netherwitch after all, and of course she's not kidding. Of course, better than that, she says. I know everything. Then Lionel has his turn to plead his case to say, I have a favor for you. Can you take me to the astral world? Of course I can, the Netherwitch said. Then the Netherwitch says, but there's a catch. Once you're there, you can never come back. You'll never return, she said. Well, just when Lionel was about to plead a case, but the Netherwitch says, no, you must leave there forever. However, she says, you can make a choice. Well, Lionel, after he thought it over, he says, if that's what it takes to save my mentor Jaga, then so be it. I must go there. I'll do whatever I can, he said. So the Netherwitch agrees with Lionel's decision and calls upon the spirits of the void to take Lionel to the astral world. But unfortunately for Lionel, what he didn't realize. Yes, it is true. He should have seen this coming a minute away. The Netherwitch was Mumm-ra in disguise. And yes, it's also true of what Lionel should have realized, that once he realized that with him out of the way, then Mumm-ra pleaded a case to say that he'll never save Castlair in time and he's going to be stuck there in the astral world forever. And yes, indeed, it was all part of the plan. So back with Lionel, now that he's in the astral world, so now all he has to do is find his mentor Jaga, that's a prisoner in the astral prison. Now remember, we saw that in the beginning of the episode. Now Lionel's getting concerned of whether his power should work or not. Well, good news, it did by using the rope of his claw shield. So that's what he did. So back with Lionel, who used the claw line on his claw shield, he was climbing up the crystal wall. But he didn't realize is that the astral monster was coming to attack, but luckily it missed. That was too close of a call. Well, long story short, despite a minor setback, that's when Lionel continues to climb up with his claw line while the astral moat monster continues to pursue him. So Lionel knows what to do. He uses his sword power just like what any good guy would do, but it didn't affect it whatsoever. But then, until long story short, thanks to Lionel's sword power, the moat monster went back into the water. Back at Castle Plondor, Slice, the leader of the mutants, wanted to know from Voltron if the Thundranium cannon's all set. And he said yes, it's all set up and ready to go. Then Voltron said that even better, it's loaded with Thundranium shells. So a couple of skycutters with Bunky and Jackman, Scythe and the Nosediver, and Voltron that is in the cannon all left the castle and headed towards Cat's lair. So meanwhile, back at the Astral prison, now I did say earlier that Nemix had to explain to Jaga why he's keeping him there for all eternity. Well, the Nemix had just pleaded a case with Jaga, who is held prisoner at the moment. He said that if he gets his hands on Jaga's knowledge, that he'll be set free. That's why he's imprisoned Jaga for all eternity, because of it. So when Jaga refused to give all the knowledge to the Nemix, that's when the Nemix says, well, in that case, I have a way to change your mind otherwise. The Nemix also says that he'll do it whatever's necessary. Not if I had anything to say about it, Lionel said. And when Nemix looks behind him, it's Lionel. Well, good news, Lionel is there to rescue his mentor. And not a moment too soon. So, when the Nemix grew into a giant, Lionel has never seen anything like it before. It's the first time he ever did. So that's when both the Nemix and Lionel went one-on-one with each other. A fight, if you will. So long story short, after the giant Nemix had missed Lionel twice, that's when Jaga told Lionel, use the sword, the Eye of Thundera, and hurry. So that's just what Lionel did, just like what any good guy would do. He used the sword of Woman's power and defeated the Nemix. So back with Lionel, now that the Nemix is defeated and back to its normal size, he frees his mentor Jaga. Long story short, the unconscious Nemix had decided to wake up and saw what had happened. Back with Lionel and Jaga, they knew that it was time for them to leave, so they did. So after that, Jaga closed the door, leaving the Nemix behind, leaving him imprisoned. So now that Jaga and Lionel are outside, now speaking of which, back with Lionel, to make sure that the Nemix will never escape, he uses the sword power to seal the door. The Nemix got very upset that he's now locked in, so he calls out the guards. Back with Lionel and Jaga, they were almost out, until a man was asking for help. So Jaga stopped to open the door to free the man, but the door was stuck. So Lionel came back to help his mentor and broke down the door. So when Jaga and Lionel went inside, there's an old man, but he just introduced himself as Brodo. Now Brodo started to plead a case to say that many centuries ago he used to be a magician, but not anymore, because according to what he says, that his wizardry just made Mumm-ra upset. So he tricked him into being transferred to the Astral prison, just like what Lionel did. So Lionel grabs Brodo's arm and says, come on, we gotta get you out of here. And with Jaga's help, of course. So all three of them left the Astral prison. But then on the way out, there's only one thing for Lionel to do, use his claw line from his claw shield. And so, with that, all three of them made it across and escaped from the Astral prison. Well, the good news is that the three of them had made it out. So Jaga went first to plead his case to say, I thought I'd never see you. I'm glad to see you too, Lionel, but now according to Lionel, here comes the bad news. He's never going to leave the astral world, as the Netherwitch said. He's going to be stuck forever. According to Lionel, he also says that way they could be together. But Jaga dismisses Lionel and says, you belong on Third Earth. But Lionel dismissed him and says that he belongs there with him in the astral world. But then the Sword of Omens had convinced Lionel otherwise. So, just like what any good guy would do, Lionel looked through his sword's eye and told him what happened. And by the time that he did, he realized what was going on. Mutants are attacking Cat's lair. And if that's not bad enough, they're using Thundralium shells thanks to Voltron using the Thundralium cannon. But Voltron's not alone because with him were Monkey and Jackman, there were a couple of Sky Cutters, and Sly, the leader of the moon, says in the nose diver. Inside the lair were the four Thundercats, the Thunder Kittens, Tigra, and Panther. They're trying to fight off the mutants the best way they knew how. But unfortunately, according to Tigra, they're using Thundrillium shells. Things are looking bad for them. So, Panther suggested that he has a plan. He'll take the Thunder Tank to get rid of the cannon. So that's what he did. So now that Panther's in the Thunder Tank, he now goes one-on-one with the Thundrillium cannon, operated by Vultureman. So back with the Thunder Tank and with Panther, it tries to dodge the cannon's attack. But unfortunately, the cannon had pinned Panther inside of the tank upside down, of course. So Jackman knows what to do. He fires on Panther after Panther got out of the tank and he started running towards the lair. Back with Lionel after he saw through his sword's eye that his friends are in trouble and this is indeed bad news. That's when he said that he had to go back to the Earth, but the problem is, how? He's stuck in the Astral prison forever. But Mordo, the man that Jaga and Lionel had rescued earlier, he just told Lionel the good news. He said, maybe I can help with that. So Lionel wanted to know from Brodo if he was sure if he can do it. Of course, Brodo says, since you saved my life, it's the least I can do. So that's what Brodo did. Now remember, Brodo did say he was a magician, and he's not kidding. So just like what Brodo did, that's exactly what happened. He transported Lionel back to Third Earth. So after that, he disappeared. When back on Third Earth and with Panthro, he was trying to run back to the lair since unfortunately his tank is upside down during the cannon's attack. Inside the lair were Snarf, Chitara, Tigra, and the Thunderkins are trying to get the mutants away from the lair. But then suddenly they just heard Lionel's voice from out of nowhere, and he just did what any good guy would do, project the Thundercat signal from his sword, of course. The first Thundercat to see the signal was Panthro, then it's Chitara, then it's Tiger, then Snarf, and then Lionel's sword appeared out of nowhere. Back with Slythe, who's in the nose diver. He just found out what happened, including Monkey and Jackalman that were in a couple of Sky Cutters and Voltron who was at the cannon. Now, by surprise, Voltron was in shock, and what he saw was unbelievable. Lionel appearing out of nowhere and with his sword. So Lionel did what any good guy would do, use his sword power and to destroy the cannon. So long story short, after the cannon is destroyed and Voltron is ejected, it's now up to the rest of the Thundercats to take care of the three mutants. Jackalman and Munkin that are in the Sky Cutters, and Slythe in the Nose Diver. So first up was Jackalman in the Sky Cutter. Well, Jitara runs to catch up with him and then throws the baton at the Sky Cutter, and Jackalman went out of control. Next up is Voltron, who was ejected earlier because of the cannon's explosion, so Lionel goes one-on-one with him. So, long story short, thanks to Lionel's sword attacks on Voltron for a moment, that's when Voltron panicked, and then after that he ran off. Next is Monkey and other mutants who's in the other Sky Cutter, and let's just say Tigra goes one-on-one with him. But then, thanks to Tigra's Bola Whip, it took care of Monkey and in the Sky Cutter. Well, the Sky Cutter with Monkey and on it caused itself to go out of control, and then after that it crashed. While that's going on, meanwhile, back with Panthro, he runs to catch up to Sly, the leader of the mutants that's in the nose diver. One of the first things that Panthro did while running up to catch up with him, he throws his nunchucks at the nose diver. So then, after that was finished, it's now the Thunder Kitten's turn to do the rest. So that's what they did. Then finally, long story short, thanks to the Thundercats throwing the capsules at the nosediver with slides went out of control, and then they crashed. Now that the nosediver had crashed for a while, it manages to get away. So Slythe and his mutants went back to Castle Plondor. So yes, it is true. Mumm-ra's plan to get rid of Lino backfired, and the Thundercats win once again. So back with Lino and Snarf out of the outside of the lair, the spirit of Jaga, who is Lino's mentor, appeared. One of the first things that Jaga did was to thank Lino for saving him when he did. Even better, he told Lino that he owes his freedom for Lino's bravery and courage. So even though Lino agrees, he didn't please his case. He said he wouldn't be so brave all of a sudden had he had known what he is getting himself into in the astral world before he went there. Then Jaga says that's true, but what you have confronted is something even better, the unknown. But what's even better, Jaga says, is that confronting it alone is a lot more courage than expected. What Jaga also told Lionel is that he faced many dangers and everything else than what he realized and what he knows. Well, Lionel has his turn to confess to his mentor's spirit by pleading a case to say that he just couldn't stand sitting around and do nothing, so he had to do something about it. Even though Jaga agrees, he says that he appreciates it and he's forever grateful for it. So, even though Lionel agrees, and then in exchange he pleaded his case to thank Jaga for what he did with the seven of the Thundercats that survived Thundera when it exploded 21 episodes ago. So before Jaga can leave, Lionel insists, now we're even. And then after that, Jaga disappeared. So Lionel told Snarf this case. He said that he thought for sure he was going to be stuck in the astral world forever. So now he realizes that he has appreciated more life what he has on the earth. So Snarf, even though he agrees with Lionel, but then pleaded a case by asking a question. You mean even those creepy mutants and everyone else? Even so, Lionel said. Well, from now on, do yourself a favor. Keep your feet on the ground, Snarf said. I guess you could say that Lionel can take that advice seriously. So that ends episode 22.